Soylent Green is people. I'm sure you get the reference. It's actually being proposed now that cannibalism may be a solution to climate change if humans start eating other humans. That's really gross. I would never do it. And I gotta admit, they play it up as though it's a conservative mentality to not want to eat human flesh. Okay, I will accept that, and I will never eat human flesh. However, it's not just these climate change people. It has been proposed in the past that humans could eat other humans, and it's a weird cultural taboo, they claim. Although I think eating people is wrong, I think we should avoid doing it. From a pure objective point of view, they're claiming there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Okay, this is a really weird subject, and I will probably die on the hill of not eating people. I think most Americans would agree. But the argument they kind of present is that human-grown meat or eating other humans can help stop climate change, and that eventually, by tasting it, people will overcome their moral objections to eating other people. I certainly hope that's not the future, but I don't know. I mean, here we go. Let's read the story. Scientist wants to end conservative taboo against cannibalism to fight climate change. Excuse me, what? I'm not going to eat people, dude. It's what? Wow. That's the kind of progressive I think we don't want. Well, let's read. From Pluralist, they write, Swedish behavioral scientist Magnus Söderlund said last week that humans must awaken to the idea of eating human flesh as a way to combat the effects of climate change. Now, naturally, when I hear that, I think of like ravenous zombie-like people tackling others in the street and ripping them apart and eating them. Of course, it's not what they're saying. I don't know what it is they're saying. And what would you want to do? Like wait till someone dies and then eat them? This is a really ridiculous and kind of screwed up subject. I got to be honest. At what point do you eat a person? Söderlund, a researcher at the Stockholm School of Economics, advanced the idea of eating people after they die. Yeah, but wouldn't that be like stringy and old meat? Come on. Tuesday on Swedish TV4, he had earlier in the week held a seminar on the subject at the Gastro Summit Fair in Stockholm. According to Söderlund, as climate change makes food sources increasingly scarce, they put scare, but scarce, people will have to learn to eat things that are now considered disgusting, including pets, insects, and most of all, human flesh. The Epoch Times reported, no, I will eat bugs. I have no problem eating bugs. You know what's always funny to me? Watching Fear Factor, and they're like, you, if you want to pass this round, must eat this piece of an animal. And I'd always be like, so your challenge is to eat food? Like, I get it, man. I'm not particularly grossed out by eating things that people eat. No, and that's just me. I know a lot of people get squeamish when they eat things they're not used to eating, but I've always found that kind of ridiculous. Maybe it's a kind of, I don't know where the mentality comes from, but it's kind of a philosophical approach to what food is. I wouldn't eat a person, that's messed up. But eating bugs? No problem. Chocolate-covered crickets? Don't care. It's food in most of the world. So why would I be grossed out because it's food? You know what I mean? So watching Fear Factor, they're like, you must eat the eye of this animal. It's like, okay. I've eaten many parts of many animals. I literally don't care. I get it. A lot of people are squeamish, though. That's why the show worked. Now take the average viewer of that and tell them the climate change people want them to consider cannibalism and see what their reaction is. Yeah, you know what, man? Maybe it's just a conservative view, but I would probably die before eating a person. But I will stress, I've made the point before, when people are starving, and they're desperate, you'd be surprised what they do. You know, we all know the stories of people who are lost and starving and they eat other people. It happens. Me, I'd probably die. Maybe it's a force of will thing. I'd probably just eat dirt or bugs. Whatever, let's read. They say, a promotion for his September 2nd to 3rd talk read, is cannibalism the solution to food sustainability in the future? No, it's not. Why wouldn't we just grow beef in the lab? That's ridiculous. Does Generation Z have the answers to our food challenges? Can consumers be tricked into making the right decision? At Gastro Summit, you will get some answers to these questions and also partake in the latest scientific findings and get to meet the leading experts. Listen, man, I understand that cultures change, and as time goes on, people adapt new things that are considered wildly inappropriate, previously. Like if you took someone from the year like 1910 and brought them to today, they'd be shocked at the way we live. Like, what is wrong with you people? I get it. Maybe I'm just an old fogey type. Maybe I just have this darn traditional view of food, but I don't think cannibalism is the answer. Think about the absurdity, right? They go on to mention that Richard Dawkins says, tissue culture, clean meat, already in 2018. I've long been looking forward to this. What if human meat is grown? Could we overcome our taboo against cannibalism? An interesting test case for consequentialist morality versus yuck reaction absolutism. I don't think Richard Dawkins is absolutely saying we should or shouldn't. I think he's making the point, a good point. And I didn't read it, but think about it this way. If we start growing human meat in labs, would people start losing their moral rejection to eating human meat? It's not a question of whether they should or shouldn't. It's a question of why people have that view. Now, me personally, I think we shouldn't do that. I just think, man, maybe it is like a traditional moral perspective of us not eating other people, even if we grow their meat. But I also want to stress, why would we? Why wouldn't we just grow chickens in the lab? Here's a crazy thing. This is what's really crazy to me. Did you know that if you take a bunch of chickens and put them outside, they will live and grow and reproduce? This is the craziest thing. Did you also know? Now here's the craziest thing. You can take like corn, for instance, and if you put it in dirt, more corn will grow out of it. Isn't that amazing? So I get it. Meat tends to be nutrient dense, a lot of vitamin B, iron, and things like that. But if we had the choice to grow meat, why would we grow human meat? Why would you? I understand the question. Look, academically, I think the question is important, right? Why do people behave the way they do? Science, I like it. But when given the choice, so they go on to point out Sutherland is not alone in musings about cannibalism. So perhaps I should clarify. Maybe does he really want to end it? I mean, that's how they're phrasing it. I want to make sure I'm really careful on this. What is the question? Is cannibalism the solution to food sustainability in the future? It doesn't need to be. I don't understand what the question is. God, that's literally Soylent Green. Like I haven't seen the movie or whatever. It's really old, but if you're not familiar, basically there's like no food left and they grind down people into their parts and then they eat the parts, called Soylent Green. So here's the thing. I want to stress this point. When I saw this, I wanted to look at whether or not cannibalism was bad for you, because that's one of the big things that people talk about. Personally, I don't care if it's good or bad for you. I think it's just beyond a standard we should engage in. Eating other people is probably not something we should be doing. Other than, I mean, you could get really sick if you eat brain. Let's read this a little bit right here. They say, in May, Washington became the first state to legalize the composting of human bodies in the name of fighting climate change. Man, that's where we're going. And being environmentally sustainable. Governor Jay Inslee signed the law in May before he aborted his Democratic presidential bid. So you need a copy editor, pluralist. People keep saying that to me. During CNN's 7-hour climate change debate on Wednesday, a number of Democratic presidential candidates issued dire warnings about climate change. Several proposed multi-trillion-dollar plans to achieve net zero carbon emissions in coming decades. More than half endorsed taxes or fees on such pollution. Well, listen, I don't know if composting human bodies is the right thing, but I will point this out. I am not a fan of ceremonial burial. All right? It's an ancient tradition where we embalm and put people in a box and bury them in the dirt. For me, you know what I want? Viking funeral. Put me on a boat, kick me out into sea, fire a flaming arrow onto my corpse. Light me up and let me sink to the fishes and the rest into the air and carbon and whatever else. That's better. I will return to the earth from whence I came. So in a sense, it's kind of like composting human bodies. But can't you just give people Viking funerals? It's way more fun, right? And that's an ancient tradition too. So here's what I did. I looked up the health implications of eating colleagues to determine if there was a serious problem with eating people. According to Medical News Today, which, yes, is a NewsGuard certified across the board credible outlet, the only real problem arises when you eat brain and you get what's called kuru, which means the shakes or to shake. It is laughing sickness. You may have heard stories about this. People who eat other people, they twitch and they shake. Well, that's when they eat brain, apparently. So in this, they say, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. They say, although the knee-jerk reaction to eating human flesh is strong, the actual morality and ethics behind those feelings aren't as simple as they first appear. They mostly say it's Western sensibilities against eating people. Perhaps it was because of the spread of disease. But they go on to point out that people in a lot of cultures actually eat people, but there were diseases associated with it. Let's read a little bit. They say, in Europe, From the 14th century up to the early 18th century, human body parts were knowingly sold and purchased as medications, particularly bones, blood, and fat. Even priests and royalty routinely consumed human body products in an effort to stave off anything from headaches to epilepsy and from nosebleeds to gout. You know what the craziest thing I saw in this was? Where is the? I don't want to read through the whole thing, but there was one part where they say that like humans eat their own parts. Let me do this. There we go. Look at this. They say, once we start to strip away at cannibalism's ability to make us instantly recoil, we see that our feelings aren't quite as clear-cut as they seem. For instance, okay, I'm going to give you guys a trigger warning right now. And I don't normally do this, but this is about to get gross. All right, here we go. For instance, many of us still eat our fingernails. What? I don't know anybody who eats their fingernails. Do you guys eat your fingernails? That's so weird. I don't. I snip my fingernails and they get tossed into the trash. You know, or some of them go errant and you vacuum them up. Who eats their fingernails? And some women eat their placenta after giving birth. What women? Cats? The lines are perhaps slightly more blurred than our initial reaction might infer. I don't know anybody who ate their placenta. Now, granted, I've seen stories on the internet, but I've never heard of people eating their fingernails. Is that a thing? Like, what do? Do you like bite them off and then just eat it? Why would you do that? That's so weird. Maybe, look, if you eat your fingernails, comment below and let me know why. Because I gotta admit, maybe this is one of those areas where I am literally just staunchly traditional in how we deal with the things we ingest. But I would just stress, the things I eat includes, I don't know, not eating body parts, fingernails, placenta, or other humans. Wow, this is so weird. Maybe, no, look, man, like I grew up in the city. I grew up in Chicago. There's a lot of death in Chicago. I don't know anybody who eats people. They say, for the purpose of the article, we do not need to wade into the interplay between instinctive gut feelings and cold hard logic. Here we will focus on the negative health ramifications of cannibalism. They basically say, there's no real, if you're just eating regular bits of human, it's fine. But they do go on to say that there's a prion disease called kuru. And it's because these proteins, they're called prion proteins, will accumulate in the brain. And if you eat them, it will screw with your body. They say it's kuru is essentially like mad cow disease. The 4 people are the only known population on Earth to have had an epidemic of kuru. And at its peak in 1950s, it was the leading cause of death among women, among the 4, which is the name of the people, and their nearest neighbors. The word kuru comes from the 4 language and means to shake. Kuru is also known as laughing sickness. They say 2% of all deaths in the 4 villages were due to kuru. The disease predominantly struck down females and children. In fact, some villages became almost entirely devoid of women. This gender difference in the disease appears to have been for a couple of reasons. 4 men, F-O-R-E is the name of the people, believed that during times of conflict, consuming human flesh weakened them. Okay, that's a fact. These women were dying. So women and children more commonly ate the deceased. Also, it was predominantly the women and children who were responsible for cleaning the bodies, leaving them at an increase of infection via any open wounds. What, really? Wait, you can get a prion in an open wound? Don't touch brains, man. Whoa, that's crazy. Look, here are the symptoms. Kuru has a long incubation period where there are no symptoms. This asymptomatic period often lasts 5 to 20 years, but in some cases can drag out more than 50 years. Once symptoms do appear, they are both physiological and neurological and often split into 3 phases. Ambulant, I'm not going to read through all these. Secondary, terminal stage, cannot sit without being supported, no muscle coordination, unable to speak, incontinent, difficulty swallowing. This is really gross. Generally, the patient will die between 3 months and 2 years from the onset of symptoms. Death usually occurs due to pneumonia or infected pressure sores. Good Lord. Although kuru is never likely to be a major health issue for the majority of humanity, the outbreak has proven useful to medical researchers. They say kuru remains the only known epidemic of a human prion disease. But understanding this disease and how it works, treatments might be designed to prevent or at least reduce the chances of future neurological prion-based epidemics. Why would we have to worry about that? Well, perhaps it's because there are people actually asking whether or not we should eat other people. I'm going to go ahead and say we shouldn't eat people, but maybe I'm just wrong and very traditional on my concept of food. I'll die on that hill, man. I'm sorry. You're not going to get me to eat people. It's never going to happen. I do want to make sure I downplay this, and maybe it's unfair to do so, but simply asking the question shouldn't necessarily be taboo. If he's advocating for it, we got to do a full stop and say, turn around, buddy, you've gone too far in the other direction. But I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out with to hear about this gross story, and I'll see you all in the next segment.